John Levine reports, reporters covering Elon Musk being nuked. Dania Sullivan for CNN, Drew Harwell for Washington Post, Ryan Mack for the New York Times, and Aaron Rupar, independent, all gone.
Awesome. Love
They're
it.
gone. Take a look at this. So Libs of TikTok says Taylor Lorenz just scrubbed her entire Twitter account.
What?
Oh me, oh my. Times they are a-changin'.
Love it.
Prominent liberal journalist Aaron Rupar suspended by Twitter. For those that aren't familiar with Aaron Rupar, there's a verb. It's called ruparing, or to rupar. Yeah. And it's when you take an out-of-context clip and apply false context to manipulate people. Yeah. That is ruparing. So he got nuked, and I think we have a tweet here. Yashir Ali says, Aaron Rupar tells me he has not received any correspondence from Twitter and does not know why his account is suspended.
I believe Rupar's the guy that sued. Didn't he sue the previous Twitter administration to get his account back? Or
no.
Am I thinking of a different guy?
Someone else.
Who's that other
They
guy?
would never suspend that guy. Yeah. I'm wondering if the reason they got suspended was for posting something pertaining to his location. I don't know for sure, but Elon just the other day posted a video of a guy who attacked his family, his kid.
Who looked like an Antifa guy.
Yup.
He was dressed like one,
Total
acting
black
like
bloc.
one. Yeah.
Conservatives don't do that. Conservative guy, in fact, I got to be honest. I put out that tweet where I was like, Neuralink I used to think it was scary and dangerous, but then Elon agreed with me ideologically. Now I like it. Like, I'd be willing to bet anyone on the right who's crazy enough to track down Musk would be like, we love you, Elon.
Of course.
Keep it up.
Yeah.
You always got false flags. Can never truly judge a book by its cover. Like,
He did own a car.
Speechless.
That's true.
Yeah. And it was not a bad car. So
That's the one wrinkle in the argument here.
some kind of wealth asset.
But it's great. I don't care at all. So, I don't want to hear this. Well, we thought Elon was going to be the free speech absolutist, and now he's suspending. No, I didn't. I don't know. I'm not a free speech absolutist. I believe in standards and norms, and you know what I really believe in? Banning these left-wing losers. And I really believe, especially banning that guy who was tracking Elon's plane. That guy's gone.
Right.
But the rest of them, too. I see absolutely no reason for Elon Musk to tolerate them remaining on Twitter.
How do you define free speech?
Well, I define free speech as I define free speech, I suppose, as the founding fathers might have defined free speech, which is, or even as John Locke, the father of liberalism, might have defined free speech, which is not totally free. Which is, yes, we have broad toleration for lots of different things, but there are limits, and they're pretty severe limits. I mean, let's not forget, we're not only talking about speech acts like fraud or direct threats or obscenity or things like that. A lot of people don't even think of obscenity these days as something not protected by free speech. But I would go further than that. All right. Yes, it's true that the libs have speech codes, but chivalry is a speech code too. And I'm all for chivalry. I'm all for banning people who are degrading our society. I mean, just as a matter of historical fact, speech earlier on in American history was much more restricted in certain ways than it is right now. We had blasphemy laws for much of American
obscenity
history.
Laws.
And obscenity. We still have obscenity laws on the books. They just don't enforce them. In fact, now they only enforce it if you have wholesome speech. If you speak obscenely, then you get to do it.
That's why I say culture is more important, because we got a ton of laws on the books they started ignoring.
Personally, I disagree, because who do you decide who's degrading society with what ideas? I think if there's bad ideas...
With your reason and your moral conscience and tradition.
Yeah, but who's going to be calling the shots here? I think that's
people
important
with the power.
here. Exactly. And power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
But someone's going to have it.
But when it comes to bad ideas, they need to be challenged with good ideas. I think we need open debate. I think we need open conversation. And I'm very curious to see what happened here. And I'm more skeptical, because I believe at the end of the day, even though we might not agree with each other, I still rather have that conversation rather than say, I just only want to hear myself.
Do we need to have a conversation about the virtues of child pornography? Do we need to have that debate? That's a debate we really need to have.
That is one issue that obviously I stand with you on.
But I know you stand with me on child pornography is bad.
Obviously,
but do you think we need to have the debate, in the free marketplace? I don't think we do. I think we've settled it.
If there's idiots out there, right, who do believe in certain ideas, which there is, right?
Yeah.
I do
Why
believe
do we have to entertain them?
They deserve to be challenged. They deserve to be pushed back.
I don't think they deserve anything.
Because but again, if you push people away, just like you do with the censorship that's been happening, you push people to more radicalized corners of the internet, and they double down on that, on their ideas, rather than having a whole bunch of people telling them, hey, this is wrong and not acceptable here. Right. By pushing them away, they won't have that kind of pushback in their life, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to hang around other, seedy people and think this is okay when it's not.
I actually would agree with you, Michael, on this one. I see Luke's point, but I think it can be refined. Like, there's a reason why we publicly denounce. There's a reason why you're saying right now we don't need to have a debate. Yeah. It's settled.
We
it's
figured
done.
it out. Yeah,
but that's one issue. But not all the issues.
No, for sure. And that means that there will come a time when you need to explain to someone who maybe says, well, people should be allowed to have their opinions. And you can be like, look, there are some things that are so morally reprehensible that it's universally despised among most human beings. And, we will tell you why it's bad.
I mean, this was William F. Buckley Jr., who's credited as the founder of the mainstream post-war conservative movement. As urbane and open-minded a fellow as ever there was, he had a debate on his show with a neoconservative, Leo Chern. And Chern said, we need to have the open society and the free marketplace of ideas. And Bill Buckley said, I actually think we can close society off a little bit. Yes, we discuss lots of things, but he said, I'm an epistemological optimist. I think that certain things are settled and we don't really need to entertain Nazis or communists.
Your political opponents are doing the same exact thing you're doing in Europe, arresting people for saying that men can't be lesbians. They're using the same justifications and arguments you are, and this is why I think it's a slippery slope. They're saying
using the same procedures, but the substance of what they are doing is the opposite.
They're saying, I know what's best for society. I know what ideas are good or bad. Right, we have to stop these ideas. We have to stop right-wing ideas.
But there's a
Therefore,
difference.
if you hurt people with your ideas, we have to stop you, censor you, and throw you in jail.
But Luke, the difference is that there is a difference between good and bad. So if I'm the CEO of Twitter and I'm determining what the standards and norms are on Twitter, and I encourage good, true, and beautiful things, and I discourage ugly, false, and wicked things, that's not the same thing as what the libs do.
But that's based off your interpretation, because for them what's beautiful is like Luke, a drag queen, right? That's beautiful for them. But that's your interpretation.
But they're wrong is the thing. And so we have faculties of reason and moral conscience, and we can perceive the world and come to fairly reliable conclusions.
Let me just make a point here. We like to believe that the world is logical, that we can set forth a set of rules that say you cannot do X, Y, and Z. And then what we discover is the interpretations of X, Y, and Z vary wildly, and we actually struggle to operate. Humans struggle to operate on a moral, logical level. In that, if you come out and say, don't be mean, don't be bad, don't hurt somebody, and then someone says, okay, well, insulting you is my opinion, I'm not hurting, and then someone else interprets it as hurting, we see there's an issue there. My view is I err towards mostly free speech. I agree with you on things like child porn. I think there's probably things we can say, do not advocate for something like that, right?
Yeah.
If you're advocating for that on the platform, we can restrict you or shut you down or something like this. The issue is, and I'll throw it back to the law, we have a bunch of laws on the books. Legally, you cannot do, but they don't enforce anymore because our culture changed.
Right.
Which means there is a centralized morality that societies are willing to tolerate. That means we don't tolerate advocacy for child porn, and there's no reason to open up tolerance to it. We just don't tolerate it.
Well, increasingly, I don't know. Balenciagas.
No, I know. And that's the issue. So my pushback for you a little bit is there will be a debate whether you want it or not, because people will start pushing.
But I suppose the conservative view from the past 20 years is politics is downstream of culture. So stop passing laws. It's really just a libertarian view, but it's stop passing laws and just, make better music or something. And I'm not really mocking it. Obviously, the culture matters a great deal, but you can't neatly separate these things, and the law is a teacher. So if I'm looking at how we got to this insane cultural position now, where we will be debating the virtues of child pornography and pedos, so it's already happening.
It's happening. They're accusing anybody who criticizes actual pedophiles. They go, "Why are you talking about gay people?"
But we got here.
It's like you just mentioned it.
But we got here because of censorship, because of people saying you can't counter this. No. We got here because those ideas haven't been able to be challenged because people have been censored for going against them.
Luke,
people have been arrested for going against them.
Why, when we had a more censor-minded regime, that censored bad things and promoted good things, as opposed to what we have now, which is a censorship regime that promotes bad things and suppresses good things.
Like, what's an example? What do you mean?
Well, I would say, let's see, the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock in 1620. And then from 1620 up through the founding of the American nation, up through about, I don't know, the early 60s, we had a basic consensus on what is moral and what is immoral, and it was Christianity. It was based on the Christian moral view. And then in the 1960s, you saw, led by the government, led by Supreme Court decisions, led by laws that weakened some of the censorship regime. You saw the attacks on McCarthyism in the House Un-American Activities Committee. You saw the free speech movement at Berkeley that led to a weakening of our obscenity laws. You saw a weakening of our laws proscribing certain sexual behaviors that then led to the sexual revolution. When you opened up that society much more, what happened? Did it lead to this wonderful period of flourishing? No, the society has gone downhill. It's gone straight to pot ever since.
But the dads used to beat the moms relentlessly.
Did
and that
they?
was like they just didn't even talk about it.
Did that happen?
Well, Sean Connery talked about how he would smack women around on TV, and society was
bad men beat their wives today, and so it just seems to me what you're suggesting is this very progressive view that the past was terrible and the present's great.
Before we had the conversation, good people beat their wives. It was just accepted. Now that we're able to have,
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's
since
true.
the dawn of man, the guy is like fall in line or face the consequences.
But is your argument that in the past, the past was basically made up of these knuckle-dragging troglodyte men abusing their wives, and ever since we had the sexual revolution, now that doesn't happen? That just seems like a very progressive, fantastical point of view.
I think it was the internet, or it was really television and radio that broke the censorship mode. Whether we wanted it or not, the technology made us look at ourselves and be like, well, that's what we are. We need to deal with this, because that's not cool.
But just really quick, deciding what's good and deciding what's bad is arbitrary. Depends for who, depends for what society, depends on what individuals in there. But at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, the government's sitting there and saying, Dr. Fauci's there, and he's like, at the end of the day, it's good for society if we censor all these other scientists and we let our doctrine through. So therefore, we need to censor this speech. We need to limit free speech. We need to ban accounts. And essentially, that's what I see you calling for.
So here's where I see where we're at. I err towards free speech, allow people to express their political views to be debated, but I think there's a little bit more limits than many of the anarchists and libertarians would be willing to entertain. And the reason I've come to this position, where I used to just be like, well, maybe you can say whatever you want, is because the system, as it's being laid out right now by you, in your view, Luke, allows the left to say whatever they want, while weaponizing that to silence anyone who opposes them. Meanwhile, you're standing there saying, well, they're allowed to do it. I guess I'm banned and they're not.
Absolutely not. No. The idea of banning speech is what created this exact society. And that's why these larger virtues and ideas need to be pushed back on and universally respected.
They are cheating,
of course
and you're playing fair, and you're losing because of it.
Also, Luke, what society doesn't have taboos? In what society is everything perfectly open? I mean, that's never existed on Earth anywhere.
I agree. Yeah, you're right about that, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive towards
something that's impossible.
Towards respecting speech and debating ideas.
Let's bring this back to the core story, right? Okay. The issue is Elon Musk choosing to ban who he wants, and my position, because I think this argument just go forever, but I think if we can bring this back to the story, Elon Musk needs to set clearly defined parameters for what he wants, but then we also need judges to interpret. In the United States, we have laws, but laws can be challenged and judges interpret the law. So when a legislative body says you can't do X, someone says, well, hold on, X could also include Y. And then a judge says, good question. I'll give you my ruling tomorrow. Yeah. The judge then looks at the law, looks at the precedent, hears the arguments, and then issues his judgment. The law is not just if yes, then, if one, then Y, if two, then it is humans trying their best to interpret. The easiest way to put it is analog. It's not digital. It's a wave, not a point.
That's great.
That means we want it to be, there's free speech. We respect this. But then when you actually start looking into it, you're like, oh, hold on. Now we're getting into the advocacy for child porn part from the left. At a certain point, we're like, it may not be a call for violence, But are we going to tolerate that level of advocacy?
That analogy, it's the analog, not the digital. Where it's not just the law is not just a bunch of letters that self-interpret on a sheet of paper, but it involves a human aspect. And what this raises, this interpretive question, I think undercuts what you're saying about good and bad, because you said that good and bad are just arbitrary, but you don't believe that. Nobody believes that.
It depends on who decides it, and it depends who's in power.
Let me ask you one question. Is it better to cook a pie for a widow than it is to kick a baby?
Cilantro is good. You have to eat cilantro because I decided so, because I'm in power. That's essentially what...
But Luke, just answer this question. Is it better to cook a pie for a widow or to kick a baby in the head?
What? What kind of hypothetical question are you even asking me?
It seems like a simple one to me. Can you really not answer that question?
Obviously, you're not going to be.
Is the pie made of poison? What's the context here?
I'm not Paul Pelosi here, okay?
But it just shows the absurdity of what you said, which is we all know that it's better, even if she's allergic. It's still better to cook the pie for the widow than it is to kick the baby in the head.
What's the pie made of? Is the pie made of
lamb and mashed potatoes? Good shepherd's pie, I like it. Peas and carrots. But we all know that
a Brina Abrovimich pie.
Is it a Brover? I don't even know.
Marina Abrovimich, the beer cooking?
Now you're going.
Well, that would be a bad pie. But even the fact
there are some universal truths, obviously. Yes.
So good and bad are not arbitrary.
But when it comes to positions of power, that is usually blurred. Obviously, whenever you give power, that power usually is being used against other individuals. So when we have people who have a lot of responsibility, if you give them more power and authority, that's not checked, that's not counted, especially when it comes to speech, it leads to very tremendously horrible situations throughout recorded human history. And when you give someone power to censor criticism of themselves, we have seen the largest human atrocities because of that. But again, this is a debate that's kind of sidetracking our conversation.
I got a couple questions.
We could agree to disagree. I respect your opinions. I think you made some good points as well.
Oh,
and I think this is an idea. Maybe we could even debate afterwards, because I know we still got a crap ton of stories to talk about.
I want to talk about the Barstool stuff, but I'll just reiterate on the, because maybe we'll talk in the members only. We'll go nuts with it. I want to believe in free speech. I want to say, make your points and we'll argue it. But then I also recognize we live in a world of cultural morality. We grew up, we have the roots of our parents, we have the legacy, the things that worked to make humanity survive. We've retained and we've shaved off the bad over a long period of time. Look, slavery is not acceptable anymore. Humans used it for a long time. The better parts have stayed with us. I'd like to believe that we can write down, if A, then B, if X, then Y. But humans just don't operate that way.
Yeah. I mean, humanity thought slavery and the Holocaust was a great idea. They went along with it, right?
Not a lot of people.
It was a good thing. It was a good thing, but then it was
Yeah.
challenged, and because it was challenged, because people said, "Hey, this is not okay. Hey, this is wrong."
No, it was challenged with bombs,
right?
And
by
guns,
force,
and not with speech.
But it started with speech, and people, and that's where it began.
World War II, the Allied front in World War II did not begin with speech. It began with airplanes and guns.
No. Obviously, there was weaponry, but obviously, what led up to it was a bunch of meetings, a bunch of talks, a bunch of escalations, a bunch of things that were related to trade, were related to embargo. So it was a slow.
Chamberlain spoke and Churchill shot. Right.
The reason the left holds the position they do is their argument is that Hitler was allowed to hold his rallies and to indoctrinate and to expand, and he was not sufficiently opposed. And his rhetoric was winning people over because of their desperation. He was basically exploiting their grievances to trick them into the psychotic ideology.
He was also suppressing people he didn't agree with. He had control of the media.
That's afterwards. How did he rise to the point where he could do that? He manipulated and exploited people's emotions, their grievances over World War I and the debt to France, things like that, the poor economy. He gave them things they wanted and then twisted that into his insane grievance.
It's also worth remembering because everyone always makes World War II comparisons because it's like the only thing that anyone's ever read.
So Stalin.
No, yeah, but the thing that's important to remember before we get too down the rabbit hole of thinking we live in the time in the 1930s or 20s or something. Weimar Germany was completely destroyed.
Yep.
Money was worthless. Mothers and daughters were holding prostitution teams together. Like that degree of desperation is not akin to something we're seeing now. But the libs exploit this and they say, well, we're just always living in the lead up to Hitler.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.